Oh my
Right.
god. All right, we are officially on Twitch and live on YouTube. Let's make this happen. Hello, everybody. I don't know what happened there. We'll start again.
You just had saggy wrestlers on the mind is all.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mike's, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day. I am Evan Irwin, and we get started like we do every week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Good evening.
Ruben Bressler.
Oh, hi. How are we?
Complete with non-saggy wrestlers.
That's right. I have very perky wrestlers.
The perkiest of wrestlers.
Even though I'm not wearing a bra this evening.
Hopefully the tater internet is behind us. You tell us.
That's true. So, we had the internet people come to the house today, and we have a new internet provider. We no longer are under the control of President of Wizards of the Coast, Chris Cox Internet. We now have LV.net.
Ooh.
So hopefully LV.net going to be a future sponsor of the show. And no potatoes, except for by... I don't know if you know this, but my roommate Harry Corvasi, former GP Top 8 competitor, is on the potatoes and water diet. He's only eating potatoes and water for like a 2-week period.
Wow.
Why?
So
Has he killed
hopefully
anyone yet? Like...
he's come very close. He's unhappy, but it's theoretically working. He and one of my other roommates are losing some weight. So hopefully all of the potatoes are over there, and none of them are right here.
What does your T-shirt say?
My T-shirt says, "I'll take the physical challenge."
It's a double dare shirt, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
Nice.
And yeah, I will take the physical challenge with my perky wrestlers.
That's right. And speaking of things wrestlering and perking, we have 100 episodes now. This is our 100th episode ever.
Serious.
Yeah. Wow. We're a little over 2 years old now. You know, we've had to take the odd week off when we're traveling and stuff, but
Right.
yeah. So it went from an idea to we've been doing this for longer than 2 years.
Now
Yeah.
we're on our second video. We have our top tens is a regular thing now, and
That's right.
we are also. I'm going to spill a little bit of tea here. We've also been emailing with a couple of artists to finally get our tokens off the ground. We found an artist that we like. We like their prices, and
Absolutely, yeah.
the artist has indicated they are available. And so if all goes well, I think we can start around like the beginning of August, like getting that hammered out.
Yes.
And
we'll
so
probably have
tokens.
them- We'll have them for, I'm guessing, for the holiday season. Is my
Yeah,
hope.
but they're finally coming.
Yeah,
We're going to make this
And,
happen, and we'll do some cool stuff for the patrons.
yeah, absolutely.
For being with us
Yeah.
for so long. You guys are fantastic, and we really
Thank
appreciate it. And we need to pick our next top 10. Now, we've been throwing together things and stuff, and I feel like our favorite lands would be something really interesting.
Ooh.
Okay.
I think next Monday, and we're going to record it for next Tuesday to release, is our top 10 favorite lands.
Nice.
So that will be...
Aaron's list will be 3 long, and all 3 will be Bazaar of Baghdad.
There you go. Well, 4 because it's a playset, right? It's 1, 2, 3,
Right,
4.
the 4th Bazaar.
And this is my first Bazaar. It's like my favorite, but not this one. It's even better.
Right.
It's fantastic. All right,
That's
so and we start also by with our giveaway. We want to give away, and whenever it's a release week for one of the new sets, in standard, we give away a full booster box of that set. I'm putting the link in the chat right now.
Hora de Devastation.
That's right. Who does not want a free box of our Devastation?
Ooh.
No Magic player I know. So get on that. Go enter. There's different ways to enter. Make it happen. We'll give it away at the end of the show right before I forget it. And someone says, "Hey, Evan, what about the giveaway?" And I go, "Oh."
Right.
All right. So to get started with our first pick, I think now we were talking sort of about which one is the more prominent of the two things we could start the show off with, but I think the Magic Online data sharing changes are the most interesting.
Ooh.
You have an announcement by Wizards, and to preface this a little bit, what has happened over the years is that SCG used to do what's called too much information. And Ruben, can you tell us a little bit about how that went? Because you were actually in the thick of that.
Sure. Yeah, I was the guy that did too much information for the brief period of time that we did it. At least the second half of too much information. Right when I got hired, I would by Star City Games, I would basically take every deck list from the 2 opens. At the time, it was the Saturday Open and the Sunday Open, and I would basically insert those into a Excel spreadsheet, and compare the archetypes with what beat what in what round, and you would get a ton of perhaps too much information from all of those 400 deck lists, and mashing them against each other over across not 8 or 9 or 10 rounds of Standard and Legacy. And then I would create an article series based around the statistics of this matchup seems to be shifting in favor of Miracles, and this matchup has sort of shifted how many copies of Stoneblade there are, and this new deck archetype is good against this, and this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there would be a ton of feedback that we got from those deck lists from the weeks and months that we did that. And then eventually we stopped doing too much information. Basically, I was told to stop writing the article series. I don't know really the whole reasoning behind it, but I was apparently the title "Too Much Information" was all too accurate.
I don't recall the exact machinations of what caused it to end. However, I know Wizards wanted to have a little bit, less information out there. The same thing happened with MTG Goldfish. Now, MTG Goldfish were doing something really interesting. Not only were they scraping the list that Wizards would give them online, but they would go through the replays, and they would actually go see exactly what decks would work, and I mean things like what turn they would win and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You would have an infinite amount of data, and they also got asked, "Hey, would you please stop doing that?" And so this idea of publishing less information. And even on the Pro Tour, you don't see as many decks from the Pro Tour like you used to. You used to actually get a page of like every standard deck that went X and or like X and 2 or X and 1. Some of that stuff was in there. Some of that stuff has been kind of cold. Like there's a selection of them instead of like literally every single one. Stuff like that. And so Wizards announced earlier this week that they're essentially doubling down on all of this thinking. There's no one actually. There's no real author of this piece. It's
that's interesting to me too.
It kind of reminds me of how when I don't know if you see that trope in the movies where there's a line of people and somebody says we're looking for volunteers, and then everybody steps back except the one clueless person. Like that's how I think they decided who was going to take the heat for this article.
And by that I mean whoever R&D is at the moment. Sure, okay.
Yeah.
And so, they've talked about how they publish streams of deck lists and stuff, and their current method is to randomly select 10 of the top-performing deck lists per format per day. On July 10th, which is a couple days ago, they're reducing the total number of top deck lists being presented from 10 to 5. And each of these deck lists will be randomly selected with the caveat that each list must be at least 10 cards different from every other list. So not only are they trying to show you sort of what is happening in a format, whether it's Standard or Modern or Legacy, but they also are like actively trying to not show you the dominance of any one deck. And it's really interesting because I feel like I've been on both sides of this fence at this point. I've certainly been on the side and even lived through the side where we had the exact percentages of Caw-Blade and Valakut and all that stuff. Like we had that data down to just its raw percentages, and people could use those things and take a look at those percentages and say, hey, this card really performs well against the Valakut deck, but it doesn't perform so well against this thing. You could do that, and you could scrape all that information and see which colors were the most powerful and whatever. And now we're just getting less and less info, and the idea is that it makes people innovate. The idea is that things don't kind of become stale and get kind of boring and old and whatever. And it's funny because I guess Standard is a format where often if it's good, you don't really hear a lot. You don't necessarily hear that it's amazing, because let's say, for example, Return to Ravnica in Innistrad Standard was very, very good. And people loved it. And but the thing was, when we were in the middle of that Standard, that there wasn't a whole lot of, man, this Standard is amazing. There was like, wow, did you see this? Did you check out that? There was people going to the terms, people having a good time. Not a lot of like, hey, have you looked around and seen how amazing this is? Because Magic players real good at finding out when there's problems, and when there's not problems, there's not a lot of talk about how it's great. You know, just like you don't call up your telephone company and say, hey, thanks for, you know, making sure all my phone calls work. We appreciate that. You know, it's not necessarily going to do that. And so, or also, you know, I guess R&D or standard is sort of like an IT department. Like, you know, if you don't really hear anything from them, it's okay. That means the job is, they're doing their job. But if you hear about it, there's a problem or they need to go fix it. Because standard, I think, is in a really good spot right now. They seem to be having a lot of really cool decks. There's that weird Oketra's Monument deck, and there's a bunch of like green-black stuff still around. I mean, there's a bunch of really cool options, and we're not really saying how good it is. I think it's actually really good. So
yeah.
Is the question, less data is going to improve that?
This is hard. So one of the criticisms that I've seen brought up is, you know, you had mentioned Return to Ravnica standard, Evan, which was one of my favorite standards of all time. I think that's the last standard that I can recall I loved. I had a lot of fun during that time. And people have brought up that we had more information available back then, and that standard was fine. Even con standard, you know, we had more information than we have now, and that didn't impact how good those standards were. And so this argument that the Wizards article is trying to sell us, that, you know, if we cut down on the deck list, that's going to contribute to making standard more healthy. Well, we have prior standard seasons to show that that's not necessarily the case. And so I think this is a good idea in theory. You know, we do sort of live in a time where information is everywhere now, and people, you know, I don't want to necessarily contribute to like the net decking discussion, but it's like it is very common for people to pick up decks and not necessarily know how to pilot them, or not necessarily understand why the cards are in the deck that they are. And so I can understand wanting to, you know, force people to do that, you know, force people to try new things, force people to really understand why they're using the cards that they are. But I do think that this, you know, could potentially blow up in their faces. You know, there's a couple other arguments floating around too. You know, some people like to 5-0 the leagues because they want to kind of see their name in lights. You know, they want to know that their deck list is going to be published if they do well in a competitive setting. And now you don't know that that's going to happen. And I've seen some people say, well, I did it just because I wanted to see my deck list published. And so now I'm just going to go back to playing friendly leagues, and that's not, you know, necessarily a good thing. And I've also seen some arguments that this might hurt non-pro players, that, you know, pro players, you know, have to play as much as they do, and so they're going to be able to see what decks are good before everybody else without having to go online and having to look at online deck lists, whereas the lone wolves, or the people who don't have teams, are going to have less information, and they might be at a disadvantage, which I find really interesting. There's just a lot of feelings about this, and I don't know how to feel, honestly. Like, just when I think I've got it figured out, I hear another argument. I'm like, well, that's a good argument too. And so I don't know.
It's weird how Magic started out with the idea that that net decking was shameful, that net decking was looked down upon. People were being like, oh, you're a filthy net decker. Like, that used to be a thing where, like, you know, real Magic players, who are really good, build their own decks and know what they're doing and blah, blah, blah. They just don't copy whatever's in Inquest. It's like, that was a thing. Like, that was an actual thing for many
Still
years.
Is in some corners.
A few, you know, particularly, I mean, I think some of these, sort of the EDH decks, like the really competitive ones that, like, you know, win on turn X or whatever, you know, those things are out there that you can find and just copy them and run with them, and people will look down upon you for it. So, but it's really interesting in terms of, like, again, is this what is going to fix the format? And it was really interesting. Josh Silvestri should not name his writing author, his writing series, the exact same as Matt Sperling's, because I almost said the wrong name earlier. But Silvestri's sick of it, apparently, of MTGO data hoarding, and, you know, why is it relevant, and what happens, and, you know, why it's a problem. One of the most interesting things, I think, the interesting points that he makes is that it's going to impact older formats, because this affects Modern and Legacy. And when you saw a world where Blue-White Miracles or whatever was just dominating online Legacy, even if that doesn't necessarily translate to real life, which, Aaron, you can speak to, that did give you some idea. It let, you know, it let the weather vane turn in a certain direction of, like, at least here I know what my goal is, I know where my target is, and I know what is good in the metagame. You can just say, like, well, maybe this is a dominant strategy, therefore I will play this to counteract it. But now, if they're all so different and you only get 5, who knows if something is terribly dominating versus something is just a flash in the pan? You have no idea.
Yeah, and it's also frustrating because, these are formats that don't get played as much. If you go on Twitch at any given time, for the last week or so, most of the streamers have been streaming the Vintage Cube. And so, nobody's really streaming Legacy that much. Nobody's streaming Vintage that much, with the exception of the challenges, which I think they said the challenges weren't going to be affected by this. So that's a good thing. But, you have the luxury, if you're a Standard player, to go on Twitch at any given moment and see a lot of Standard being played or see a lot of Draft being played. For those of us that play the older formats, a lot of the information that we get comes from Magic Online. We can't just tune into a GP and see what the top 8 of the GP was, because there aren't many GPs that are Legacy. And so, we base so much of what we do on these online events, and to have that narrative be, sculpted in a different way than what we're used to really can affect, the metagames and the decks that we play. And it's also just scary to think of that. It's scary to think of, we talk about transparency a lot, that Wizards can essentially sculpt the narrative however they want to. And, I don't want to get too tinfoil hat about it, but if a deck is doing well, maybe they don't want you to know that, and so they're not going to post those deck lists, and it's going to look like everything's fine, when in reality it's not. And you can't. What's that? The meme of the guy tapping his head. It's like, you can't ask for bans if you can't see the deck is powerful, and so yeah, it's kind of scary.
Yeah, I mean, we're all of two minds here, right? We see the pluses and minuses of both sides. I've always been on the side of, I just don't think there's almost ever any reason to hide information, particularly in a game like this, right? Like, it's been brought up in the chat that net decking and the sharing of information across the internet has ruined other games. Mm-hmm. I don't have specific examples of that. But certainly there have been lively internet message boards and discussions and article series around things like Versus, where decks got very homogenized very quickly. But the flip side of that is, what are you actually protect? Like, who are you protecting?
Yeah.
Like, what is the end goal of producing a Magic set? Is it to provide a enjoyable experience across a broad swath of people? I don't know why I did that. That was weird. Or is it to are you specifically catering to specific audiences with specific cards? And one of that specific audiences is the professional circuit, where they are trying to solve a problem, trying to find the solution to an equation, basically. Mm-hmm. And there is or is it both, or is it neither? Like, what is the goal? Is the point? And I think that for a lot of people, the goal is to build the best deck imaginable as quickly as possible, particularly before you get to the Pro Tour. And part of that is learning from other people, smarter people than you, even people who just have a different outlook than you and aren't necessarily smarter. And having a starting point of a net deck and being able to tweak it from there is a big piece of that. The fact that Magic came along before the internet started, really in earnest, and then the internet is a tool that allows people to share all of their information and data very, very, very quickly, much more quickly than when Magic the Gathering was first invented, is a problem for everything that's more than 20 years old and trying to adapt to the new world of the net. But it's something that has always sort of had this push and pull within Wizards of the Coast, where they want people to have fun and they want people to express their creativity. But some people don't care about their creativity. Some people just want to win, mm-hmm. right? And so how do you cater to both audiences? I'm not sure I love the answer here. I've always been on the side of I like having too much information. But by the same token, I understand the worry and I understand the caution. And so I'm not totally up in arms about this. There are certain warning signs. I think that having this article written by Wizards of the Coast rather than having a name attached to it is certainly worrisome to me. That's just like a canary in the coal mine kind of thing of like, well, we know this isn't going to be popular, so we may as well not put a target on anyone's head, right?
Yeah. Right. So they can't the pitchforks can't come for anyone. Aaron Forsythe, it's time. It's like, right. Well, it's not Aaron who thought that, it was so and so in R&D, and he's the head of it and whatever. Okay, sure. So I like to try new things, all right? I like to do things that have never been done before, and I'm pretty sure Wizards wants to do the literal opposite of that, but hear me out. And here's the same reason I said maybe you should add cards to Standard instead of banning more things. Literally, just give us all the information. Just give us everything. Now, first of all, there is a difference in that Magic Online data will not match real-world data. It just won't. People's collections are different. You know, certain things have like sort of regional presences and whatever. You know, and so what Too Much Information from SCG was very much a local meta type. You know, here's what the people in that area like to play. Magic Online, of course, is the planet. Like, just give it a try. What do you have to lose? Because right now, this weird like you know, hand around the throat of any information you can get, like, is that improving us? Are you happier? Like, because it feels like we just keep doubling down on this idea of like, well, maybe if we could just take away and take away and take away. Well, why don't you just not? Or at the very least, and I think this is fascinating, and I don't know why they wouldn't want to do something like this, is to look at old Standard formats. Tell us about last year's Standard. Tell us about the Standard from 2 years ago, okay? Make it 2 years ago so you can make 100% sure there are no sets in that Standard that are in this Standard, and tell us what happened. And tell us what was the best color, what was the best deck, what was the most powerful interaction, you know, what was the average turns, you know, that they had in Standard, stuff like that.
Give us an autopsy. That would be very interesting.
A post-mortem that is really, absolutely, amazingly full of data, and you still don't have to share the raw data, because I know it's scary for whatever reason it's scary, but, like, you could tell us what happened. And I think that would be amazing. I would absolutely love something like that. It feels like the same conversations we had to try to have them talk about the FFL, you know, have them talk about the Future League, publish some deck lists. It's okay. We're not going to judge you. We understand you guys are, you know, it's like 12 people or whatever building decks versus the planet, you know, grinding out immediately. But, you know, that to me is really fascinating. And again, just like before the format happens, it's interesting. Well, after the format happens, it's also interesting. So Wizards, it's not always the best thing to choke off information, but maybe it is. Who knows? Well, let's keep moving to what I would describe as the worst product announcement I have ever seen for a Magic product. And I mean, not close. These guys were like, how could we possibly make the product look worse? And they were like, I got it. The images have to be like 20% of what they sent us. And they're like, yeah. And then they high-fived, they went to lunch, and here we are. So the website Skewed and Reviewed, first of all, really, Wizards? Skewed and Reviewed?
What is that?
I've never even heard of that site. What is it?
Never heard of it in my life. I don't know. But
they got a real nice, like, X Games ESPN2 logo for their website, though.
Oh, bless their heart.
I mean, 93 called. They want their logo back. I understand.
SKNR.net was established in 2002 by syndicated reviewer and radio host Gareth Von Kallenbach.
That sounds like a name you'd use when you want to bounce checks and, like...
It's a movie news and reviews kind of website.
Like when Karen on Will and Grace, her alias was Anastasia Beaverhausen. Like that's what that reminds me of. Like I'm not Ruben Besser, I am Gareth von Sicklemeyer. Like
it is a bit outside the realm of the normal Magic the Gathering website. I'm looking at their homepage right now, and they have no Magic the Gathering related news, including these Planeswalkers.
So of course, give them a big scoop like this. Like
I don't know why they got it. I understand that Wizards likes to branch out and they want other media outlets to be able to get stuff, and you know that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But when they take their exclusive and they just you know they sleeve it in pigskin, they pun it so hard, like you can't see the Planeswalkers. It's just a bunch of tatery photos. They're all tatered out. It's just 100% tater. The little box is all tatered out. You have this
Ruben, are you taking a freelance work? Is that?
And believe me, I know taters.
He knows them fresh taters, and
let
me tell you,
taters precious.
There's supposed to be like this weird, like oversized card version of Nicol Bolas, but it's just like in gold and black, and I mean it's a screen print, but it's on Magic cardstock, which is weird. The actual Planeswalker cards themselves, you just could not see them hardly at all. Like you had to go to Reddit and hopefully they would show you, like there's this Flickr album, I literally just clicked on it and check out on the video if you're watching how ridiculously small these guys are. I can't see any of them. You know, that's kind of the point of the product announcement for a card game, is to see the cards.
Yeah.
It hurt. All right. So
and the fact that it took so long to fix, like I had an article posted over at Nerd Rage Games a couple weeks ago, and the minute it posted, I found things wrong with it, and I was IMing the editor to get it fixed straight away. Like this article with the fuzzy photos sat there for a smooth 24 hours. Like how did nobody make a phone call of, can you please upload a better picture for me, please?
Lengths of time.
It's still there. Nothing changed. They updated nothing.
How?
Seriously, guys, you know, either way. So the next day, thankfully, Wizards was like, yo, here's a link to the site that screwed it up, and here's images you can actually see. I have them up on the screen now. There's Jason, Raveler of Secrets, Liliana Death's Majesty, Nissa, Steward of Elements, Chandra, Torch of Defiance, and Gideon of the Trials, along with, of course, Nicol Bolas, God Pharaoh, who's like etching them in stone, which is really cool. I think ultimately, while it may not be for everybody, I appreciate the fact that they're trying something new and different, and they look really cool and unique. And this is SDCC stuff feels like the part where Wizards can really go creatively and just let them do whatever they want to do. And I think these came out really nice. I don't really like Nicol Bolas bent over, you know, scratching, but you know.
I think that the big, like the carrying case that has the tan carrying case that has Nicol Bolas in relief. I think that the like 1960s style etched Nicol Bolas gold, black, and white poster are just gorgeous. I think both of those products outshine the Planeswalkers themselves to me, in terms of just how beautiful they are. Now, obviously, the cards are going to be the things that are going to be the targets for most players, because they're Magic cards, and the other things are posters and a carrying case. But I really, really like this poster and the tan kind of briefcase thing that all these come in. Just really interesting stuff that they've tried to add to the San Diego Comic-Con exclusives that they've continued to add to new stuff to, which I think is you know, even though I don't particularly like the hieroglyphic idea, like I get it. Vincent Proce is cool, is like a really good artist. But I just don't personally really like the hieroglyphic cartoon idea for these. I think it's weird. I just don't get it. But I appreciate the artistry and the work that he put into them.
I mean, they used to give you a Garrick axe, right? A Nerf axe.
Oh, yeah. Everybody wanted that thing. Yeah. So speaking of SDCC, Eric Deschamps is making a playmat with all of his zombie planeswalkers that should be out sometime soon. I'm all over that. Like, I want that in my life so bad. Also, I have a mosquito floating around, so if you happen to see me, like, randomly swatting, I'm not breakdancing and I'm not crazy. Perfect. I'm just trying to kill this freaking bug, so...
Exactly. So, right, it's a mosquito. Yes, mosquito.
I'm so hyped for the SDCC stuff. I just can't keep it in.
I can't. I'm just trying to figure out, you know, like if this site really wanted to do this, and I have full confidence that Wizards did not send them tater photos. Okay. I just
that's more confidence than I have.
No, they certainly
there's things in this world that I know I communicate with, and people I communicate with. I am just positive they didn't send them tater photos so that they could later put it on Wizards.com the right way. But okay, sure, whatever. That was a thing that happened, and I think those promos are going to be sweet. They're instantly going to be worth a ton more than $180 just because they only make a few of them. They're working with Mondo, which is really cool. If you have any of Mondo's stuff, it's a company that makes like really cool, super limited edition collectibles for various pop culture things. Like, for example, there's going to be a limited edition vinyl Contra soundtrack at San Diego Comic-Con with like brand new artwork. Because Contra's awesome, and the artwork is super sweet, and like the vinyl is all colored plastic and looks super amazing. Like they make really cool stuff. So either way, that's happening. Let's move on here to gathering the townsfolk.
Before we move on, real quick, I wanted to point out that this year HasCon is happening, right? So this is the first time that Hasbro is going to have their own convention on the scale, not quite of Comic-Con, but close.
Have you seen how expensive that is?
It's very expensive.
And there's like rules, I guess, where like you can't ask. I heard a rumor that like you can get your picture taken with Twilight Sparkle, but you can't ask them things, or like there's specific rules. Like it's just so what? Like
are these people in costumes? Is that what we're saying here?
Yeah.
My main point though is that I don't know how much longer a relationship between Magic the Gathering and Comic-Con will last once HasCon is on the map. And so, you know, I don't know off the top of my head if these are going to be Comic-Con exclusives for much longer and instead will be HasCon exclusives in the future.
I wouldn't be surprised if they make that move. I mean, they're already doing a second, you know, set-esque of that stuff, and who knows what those are. I know that when we find out that information, it won't be in a pixely, tiny, shrunken
10 pixels by 30 pixels
that never changes, that they never update or fix, never, not one update, not one change.
That's how you not get a preview card in the future, folks. Is you do that.
Yeah, you take a big scoop and then you plop it. You just.
But I'm still blown away that nobody made a phone call. Ask Stibbs how many times I pinged him in the middle of the night, be like, "Can you fix my blog post, please? Can you fix my audio, please?" Like, how could you just let it sit? I mean, they might have dropped the ball, but how did nobody from Wizard side call up and be like, "Can you fix this, please?" That's just sat there. Like, how?
Yeah. I don't understand it, and again, it's one of those moments where I'm like, this is unique in its badness. It's much like that silver $10 thing with Jace the Mind Sculptor on it. You remember that? The silver coins you could buy? Like, it was
Lord.
It was the dumbest idea ever. And it was like astoundingly dumb, and you're like, what executive lost a bet? But either way, gather the townsfolk. So there's a guy on Reddit who was going to be super clever and said, you know, hey, I really miss Grand Prix trials. I wish that Grand Prix trials were back. He has fond memories of them for whatever reason. I'm guessing that his was the only store where people actually showed up to them.
Right.
Because the only trials I've ever seen be successful are actually at the event. And stores that ran them, like, would cross their fingers and hope to get 6 people, let alone more than that.
Yeah.
Trials were just not very exciting. For me, ever. Even back when I was in my most competitive, drive into stuff every single week, day in, day out, no one cared about trials. However, he cared about them. So he said, hey, cartouches return trials, right? And if I could just, you know, collect all these cartouches and send them to Wizards.
And mail them to you, yeah.
Right. It also kind of awkwardly points out that we still have no Helene Bourgeau replacement.
Right.
There's no one to talk to there. There's Scott Larrabee, and if Scott Larrabee were to leave, I honestly have no idea who I would talk to around for organized play stuff there. But
I thought this was a very clever and interesting way to address the issue. Whoever this 12_barrel_monkeys user on Reddit is like, hey, we have this actual issue that we wanted solved.
Oh, like 12 monkeys.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Alrighty.
Like the movie. Okay,
like the movie, 12 Monkeys, and also like the game, Barrel of Monkeys. Yes.
Okay.
Wow.
We're good to. All right. So this guy had this issue, and he sort of solved it in not. It wasn't snarky. This was like a dad joke answer. Yeah. And just it was pretty mature, honestly, as a way to draw attention to the issue without really calling anybody out. Just saying like, hey, maybe this will work. This, you know, it's like when you're 5 years old and you're like, if a piece of toast always lands butter side down and a cat always lands on its feet.
What?
So if you tie a piece of toast to a cat, it will hover in midair. Right? Like that's their answer.
I've never heard that before.
You've never heard that before?
That was just toast lands butter down?
Yeah, whenever you drop toast, it always lands butter side down, and a cat always lands on its feet.
I mean, I knew about cats.
If you tie a piece of toast butter side up onto a cat, you can that's free energy that you can run your car on.
Right. Every car these days, I don't know if you knew this, Aaron, but your battery is actually a cat and a piece of toast in there.
Yeah.
Right. And then the toast disintegrates and you have to buy a new battery.
That's this kind of solution, right? Is like, I bet we can get Grand Prix trials to come back if we send them Grand Prix cartouches, right? So it's like a very clever, tongue-in-cheek way to respond to Wizards of the Coast. It definitely got their attention. They responded. Wizards Mike responded, we do appreciate the feedback, so thanks for taking the time. The group that works on in-store play programs saw this today and enjoyed it. We have not yet received the package, but look forward to being buried in cartouches when it arrives. Also, my coworker Aaron is messaging you, which you should definitely check and respond to, smiley face. So he certainly at least got their attention. Whether it leads to anything, who knows?
Someone pointed out if they are going to send 250 trials back to them.
Yeah.
Like 50 of each trial.
Oh,
that'd be great.
For 250 of each cartouche.
This was nice. It was, I think Ruben brought up a really good point. It was a nice change of pace from the usual things that we see. Normally it's, Redditors love to do open letters. Like, it's an open letter to Helene Bergeau. And it's like this really serious, there's all sorts of like bullet points and there's dashes and there's bylines. And it's just like, girl. And so I think we're all over the open letters, and this was cute. It was quirky. He wasn't being hard on, they weren't being hard on them. We don't know who this is. It was sort of, cheeky, and I can't blame them for trying, and we've obviously seen, the people who sent them the pizza, asking them to ban Marvel. There was the lovely sign saying ban Top. The Wizards has shown that they can kind of laugh and that there are clever ways to sort of appeal to them. And so I think it's great that this person tried. I think it's great that they're trying to do something great for their community, and you don't know until you try.
I mean,
you celebrate like silly clever stuff like that. It's so funny to me. I can imagine someone sitting there like, hey, we wanted to talk about like maybe a policy change or in-store programs change, and they go, well why? And you go, well, there's this joke, see, and like that's where the conversation starts, is the silly joke.
Speaking of silly jokes, Ruben, we just got tagged in a tweet of a cat rolling around on a piece of toast. So I hope there are GIFs about this.
Oh, yeah, no. Somebody made a short film. I forget how long ago this was, but there was a short film of like sub-Saharan third world Africa, where a guy accidentally stumbles upon this when he accidentally like ties a piece of toast to a cat and then becomes a millionaire. Like that's the plot to this. I gotta look it up later. It's really fun.
Wow. Okay,
I'll go ahead and put that on the screen now. Currently, we are watching the Cat Toast Paradox. We are watching a cat spin.
I can't believe you've never heard of this before.
I've never heard of it.
I've
obviously heard the cat one.
This when I was like 11.
Wow.
I was obsessed.
Absolutely amazing. So, either way, for what it's worth, I just don't see it happening. As someone who played in Grand Prix trials, tried to promote Grand Prix trials, no one cares. If they're not at the event, I swear it's the worst.
Yeah, I think that Grand Prix trials were a necessary, I hesitate to say evil. They were a necessary piece before all of the individual store promotion kind of things happened, before Star City Games came out with their in-store programs department and TCG Player and all of the various different companies started doing their own thing to be able to fill the void, to be able to give stores their weekly events. And even before that, various local game stores would have their own local tournament series. I know that Comic Town in Columbus, Ohio, always had series that built up to stuff over the course of 2 or 3 months. I would always hear stories from my buddy Tannen Grace about his local game store in Baton Rouge. I forget the name of it. I apologize. But they would always have a tournament series with a point system and a lot of prizes at the end and stuff like that. Now that those are much more common, Grand Prix trials are just a relic of the past. They're just sort of unnecessary. And so, yeah, I think that, while perhaps this one case, they really liked Grand Prix trials, this one store, maybe there's 24 around the country, they didn't work for most of the hundreds and hundreds of LGSs around the world.
Yeah, and not to mention the awkward conversations of, the people who, the people who would play in them being in that situation. I also come from an area where we don't have very many large events. And so, there were people that were playing in GPTs just to have something to play in. And then you'd find that one kid who's actually going to the event, and say you get to the semifinals and you're like, are you going? And they're like, no, but I still want to play. And it's just like, I really can use the buys here. And so those were some really awkward conversations too.
Wow. So let's keep moving here into splash damage. Now, splash damage is where there's something that happened in the world. It's not exactly magic, it's not from Wizards per se, or it's about magic, but it's not exactly, the things that we get to talk about every day. But there was an article on Mashable where magic isn't on very much, where Wizards of the Coast isn't showcased. About the Magic Pro Dana Fischer. Aaron, could you tell us a little bit about this little lady?
Oh God, she's everything. Like it's Dana's world. We just live in it. So, so Dana is 6 years old. She's been featured extensively on the mothership. I know Channel Fireball has given her a lot of free swag. I believe her dad was a pro back in the day, or like her dad was a serious grinder, and so he's kind of passed this on to his daughter. She's 6 years old. She's been playing Magic. She said she started playing 3 years ago when she first learned Magic. She's been playing. She's played in 4 Grand Prix so far. Her 5th will be at Minneapolis, which is next month. She set a goal for herself at GP Vegas that she wanted to win 5 games. And so I believe she finished 5 and 4. So she lost her winning in to make day 2. She wants to be the youngest person ever to make a day 2 of a GP. And she's just a little rock star. I ran into her at GP Vegas on the way home. I had a stop in San Diego on the way home, and I got off the plane, and she was the first thing I saw. She was in the waiting area. She was wearing a Liliana crown, and she had a flashing scepter like a damn queen. And I went up to her and I was like, "Hey, rock star, can I get a selfie with you?" And there was no awkwardness. There was no nothing. She posed, instant pose. She knew the camera was on her. She just has charisma for days. And just, I don't know anybody who's not in love with this little girl. Like, Chad is rooting for her. She was charming everybody in Vegas. There's a slideshow at the bottom of the article of random people just posing with her. You can't not root for this little girl. And her dad is such a great sport about it. All of her pictures are meme worthy. Like, I just can't stop gushing about this kid. Like, there's just so much to love about her story.
This is one of those human pieces that kind of went outside the world of Magic because it's so unique, it's so cool, much like sort of the football player who plays Magic. And this is one of those kind of awesome outliers that you're not really going to see. And it's fantastic they put such a sweet spotlight on it.
Yeah, I mean, she taps into so many different spheres, too. It's like, a lot of us, have grown up with people. We now are looking at the next generation, people are now bringing their kids into the game, and sort of we're seeing that angle. There were a lot of MTG dads that enjoyed this and were like, how did you teach her? Like, I want to teach my kids. I want to teach my girls or my boys. And so I feel like this hits on that angle. It also hits on the fact that she is so young, and that's really great. And there's just something for everybody really with the story.
Yeah, and, we talk about every once in a while in Splash Damage an article about Magic that appears on Nerdist or, like, I don't know, we got one on Forbes one time, or when we head up to the front page of Reddit or something like that. Mashable is a huge deal. This is like a whole nother they've got 6 million Twitter followers. Yeah. Does Mashable.
1,200 shares so far.
For this article.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's like they have the Mashable Awards, which are like some of the big, basically internet. I don't know if it's internet Oscars, but like internet Grammys or whatever. I don't know what the equivalent would be, but basically, this is like a thing that people care about. This is a website that is a big deal when it comes to social content and things of that nature. And so to be able to get an article that is this purely positive, like there is no negative anywhere having to do with this. It's amazing. And specifically for Dana, it's really interesting to me on a couple of angles. One, Grand Prix are intimidating, man.
Yeah.
You ever have a friend that you play Magic with and you're like, I'm going to go to the Grand Prix, and they're like, I'm not sure I want to go to the Grand Prix, and you're like, but it's Magic. And you're like, yeah, but there's a lot of people I don't know there. Like, going to your local game store is intimidating enough if you don't know anybody, let alone if you're going to hang out with thousands of people. And she's 6.
Doesn't phase her.
She doesn't have that part in her brain. So good on her. And a quick factoid for everybody out there, especially Erin, because I think I know how to sell Erin on having this not just be like her hero, but like top 2 Magic players on her list. Reed Duke started playing Magic when he was 5.
Yeah, I'm aware.
Dana started when she was 3.5.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
There you go.
Yeah.
Get them while they're young.
Yeah.
Unreal. So that is a fantastic. I mean, this is what we want. We don't want the butt cracks. We want the Danas. Okay, that's what we need in terms of press for Magic.
We don't want the Kotaku hit pieces. We just
correct.
She also played the best thing for me at Grand Prix Vegas was they gave her a round 1 feature match in the Modern tournament, and she played against like a normal Magic playing dude.
Let's be clear, she beat Burn. Like that.
Right. What I'm saying is, if you were to picture a deck that a 7-year-old would play, Burn would probably be the one that comes to your mind.
Yeah.
Instead, she was playing Elves.
Oh, yeah.
Which is not uncomplicated.
Wow.
And defeated Burn.
Yes.
So
work, little one.
It's got a lot. Yeah, I mean, and the whole next generation thing is a big deal. Somebody in the chat brought up the Kiefers.
Yeah.
Team Kiefer, especially on the Star City Games Open series, and the next generation of very young folks coming forward. Absolutely. I mean, it's something that's necessary for the growth of the game, and Dana, I hope, is the flagship pro for this, because she's well on her way.
Yeah.
That's great. So we're going to move on now to a little Q&A. You know, it's been a while since we've had some of this. It is our 100th show, after all.
Oh, you forgot something.
But first, we're going to go back to splash damage, much like the giveaway winners. I also forgot we had another entire topic to talk about, which was there were the 2017 Chesley Awards, yes. And these are art awards that are given for various pieces of artwork. And these are, you know, sort of very lauded awards that people strive very hard to get, and they'll be on the resumes forever. And so I have the page up here now where we have the award photo for best cover illustration. And, you know, you have best cover illustration for the paperback or ebook, and you can check out some of the stuff. For example, the best cover illustration for paperback or ebook is Julie Dillon, and I actually got to work with her on one of the Star City Games playmats for the IQ series.
Oh, that's right. I remember
which is super cool. That, you know, like this was years and years ago. Right. But the winner for best gaming related illustration was Ryan Yee. And what was the card's name again?
Die Young.
Die Young, absolutely.
Beautiful card.
Bringing it up here on the screen for you. Just there's so much emotion. The colors are beautiful. Like, it says so much about what the Aetherborn are. Like, it was just a beautiful, amazing piece, and it's awesome to see Magic art again lauded to this level.
Yeah. I also heard. Oh, sorry. I was just saying, you tagged me the other day, Ruben, that the art for that creepy new wall had made it to like the main Reddit or like
Moaning Wall.
Yeah.
So r/r creepy is desperately and madly in love with Magic the Gathering art, and the art for Moaning Wall from the new set, Hour of Devastation, made it all the way up to number 15 on the main page of Reddit for a little while. So yeah, that happens every once in a while with Magic art. It can be easy to forget sometimes that we have world class and not even close to exaggerating, actual best in the world artists working on the game that we play in a 2.5 by 1.5 square on the cards that we hold in our hand. It can be easy to forget. You know, in addition to the best gaming related illustration, the best product illustration was by Donato Giancola, who's another Magic the Gathering artist. Old school Magic artist. Nothing to do with Magic the Gathering. This is like people spacewalking, I guess. But that illustration won with one of these awards as well. I think it's just brilliant that Magic the Gathering gets this kind of recognition from the big art institutions like the Association of Science Fiction and Fantasy Artists, and there are other art awards they win regularly as well. So yeah, I think that Die Young is certainly a deserving winner. I remember the first time I saw the art for Die Young and was like, man, that is just the saddest, just most evocative piece of art I'd seen in a good long while. And I thought it was just beautiful.
You could feel the emotion in that card in ways that not every card is able to do so. It's just like you see some people and they try to make artwork of things that are moving, for example. And when you find an artist who's really good at it, it's hard to pinpoint exactly why you see the sense of movement or ferocity or excitement or explosion or whatever it is. But man, when someone does it really well, it really stands out. And I think the emotional level of heartbreak and regret and goodbyes was just terrific in this one.
Absolutely.
All right, so now that we've moved past the topics I keep forgetting, I'm actually going to add one. I'm going to go back before our quick Q&A here, and I'm going to add one. We're going to go back to Gather the Townsfolk because this is really sweet. I actually enjoy the fact that we get to talk about something like this, where Eric Froelich is now officially a free agent.
Girl.
Has announced that apparently Channel Fireball Ice is going to have a little shakeup of some sort. We're just getting sort of preliminary information where there was a post, and if there's any teams looking for a Platinum Hall of Famer,
and the fact that nobody's talking about it.
No one's going to say things.
Yeah, who knows, man?
I mean, Michael.
So right now,
Kai and Heberholtz the other day.
Yeah.
where like Kai made a post about like who he was nominating for his ballot, and like Heberholtz chimes in and was like, "You still haven't let it go, have you?" And I was like, and I was hooked. I was like, oh. And then like Sullivan chimed in and said something about like punching someone in the junk, and I was like, I can't not look at this. I love this time of year so much. Just
wow.
So to refresh your memory, Channel Fireball Ice is PV, Ifro, Yoel Larson, Mike Sigrist, Ben Stark, Andre Strosky. So Ifro theoretically leaving Ice and needing a new team. I don't know exactly what the deal is because we hadn't really. I mean, this is very preliminary news on this. This happened today, right?
Literally today.
And also Michael Majors having to leave. I forget the team name, but the Brad Nelson team, and Brad announced it. Genesis, and Brad announced the replacement player on that team as well.
Yeah. So this is, I think, our first
after Michael Majors went to go work at Wizards.
Yeah.
Right. This is the first ever big shakeup of a team's roster that I don't think anyone really saw this one coming. Of all the people of all the teams, I was expecting sort of what I would describe as a lesser known or lesser personality to be shifting.
Sure.
So
I mean, the reality is it's probably nothing, because usually it is. Like I remember when the teams first had like the big split, like a couple of years ago, and people were clamoring, and it was so anticlimactic. It's probably nothing, but for people like me, it's like you can't help but spin your mind into wild scenarios of love it. So
wow. So
yeah.
So I mean, who knows? Maybe there's tea there. Maybe there's no tea there. Maybe there's shade being thrown. Maybe there's no shade.
Who knows?
Who knows?
But it's also free agency period, right? Every sports free agency period is rife with controversy. We're in the middle of the NBA free agency period for anybody who actually pays attention to sports ball. And there was a ton of crazy like Twitter back and forth and emoji battles and like people who had their feelings hurt about people going to certain teams. I mean, it's always going to happen when you switch allegiances and go to different teams. And now that we have teams being a more important thing in our sport, it's just going to be a thing. So, it's just part of our growing pains.
I love it.
This is terrific. So there's we're going to move here to Q&A, and there's been some really nice questions in the chat. Thanks everybody for giving us some ideas. And there was two questions. One of them, which I wanted to talk about, I would rather talk about second. The first one here just came up from the chat. Mr. Christ, Qrist, says this is something that's been discussed with Mero a few times on Blogatog, putting aside power level of the individual cards and strategies. Do you think hexproof has been bad for the game? Should it revert to Shroud?
No. I think that hexproof gives the player who played the creature with hexproof more options, and that's the important part.
But are they too good?
I think get rid of them both. I think get rid of them both. Like, hexproof is just a feel-bad mechanic. Like, we talk a lot about, Dredge gets a lot of flack for, how non-interactive it is and things like that. But, who can honestly say that they enjoy losing to Bogles? Like, when you see, a Glade cover elf or whatever that crappy little elf is, with a bunch of Umbras on it, that doesn't feel good. Like, nobody likes losing to that. I heard a lot of feedback this past weekend at the pre-release of the worm, the blue worm, the 5/5 with hexproof. That wasn't fun. Like, I heard people complaining about that card. They were like, what was I supposed to do about that? I know that in Pauper recently, the Haruria guys released a bunch of deck lists, as they usually do when a new set comes out, and they released a Pauper list where you can exhume that thing in Pauper. And there are some people that are just like a 5/5 hexproof. Like, it's just an unfun mechanic to have to deal with. And I would be fine getting rid of both of them, to be honest, Shroud and hexproof.
What's wrong with Shroud? What was Shroud doing
well,
about it?
We're not doing Shroud's not around anymore. But
I think that both are fine and can both coexist with each other, but they need to be careful about what they print them on. Like, 1/1s for 1 with hexproof obviously created this combo deck that is kind of miserable to play against. But I think that the 5/5 for 7 getting exhumed, I think that's a perfectly reasonable card to have hexproof. I think that hexproof is an ability that should be reserved for creatures that are much more expensive to cast. I think that Troll Ascetic is a perfectly fair card. It's very look. That's the original hexproof, right? Is Troll Ascetic?
Right.
Is Troll Shroud. That card existed in multiple sets for many, many years. People love it. It's iconic, and yet it's not unfair. So I think that there is a way to make it work that won't make it a feel bad.
I've certainly... Hexproof to me gives me so much frustration when I play against it. It gives me satisfaction when I play with it. But man, the other side of that blade is so sharp. Like it really... Yeah. I mean, the scale behemoth, right? The 6/7 hexproof guy is just
not reasonable.
It's ridiculous because if they have any pump spell, any trick in the slightest, there's nothing you can do about it. How many times I've been staring at that guy when I have a final reward in my hand and just get crushed. Just smashed by this living abyss that there's nothing I can do about it.
I mean, if you give your creature Death Touch, if you have Trial of make them sacrifice a creature, like there are ways to handle it. Or if you have like Wraths, which don't exist anymore. I mean, I get the frustration. I just think that it's a reasonable ability to exist in small doses on large creatures.
Sure.
Fair enough.
I also think that Shroud should be the blue one and Hexproof should be the green one. I don't think there should be blue creatures with Hexproof. I think that that's a little unreasonable.
It's a little silly, and ultimately I have had... If there was the choice of you can only have one, I would 1000% rather have Shroud. I would just rather have the one that doesn't make me want to like punch a wall because I couldn't stop it. I had a million ways to target it, but I can't target it. It has its own ridiculous deck around being frustrated. Like, you didn't nice, you can't do anything about this guy. It's just a little 1/1, you know, get you.
To be fair, you know what can handle a scaled behemoth?
What's that?
Ruin Rat.
Ruin Rat. Hashtag Ruben Rat.
So in case anybody missed it, we had a nice discussion about Ruin Rat in our latest top 10 video. You should definitely go check that out. But I put out a call in that video. If we have any artists watching, Ruben loves Ruin Rat. I think Ruben Rat would be really great. So if we have any artists, if you can make a Ruben Rat, send that to me because I would love it.
Or just good old-fashioned, you know, Mishra's Photoshop, you know.
Yeah.
We can make it happen.
Maybe Ruben Rat should be my token.
You're just holding the bone?
Holding the bone.
Maybe you're like holding the microphone. Holding the microphone, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. That would be hilarious.
That would be fantastic.
And you know, and I gotta be the 5/5 horse, right? Because my horse is amazing.
Clearly, you have 5 kids.
Right. Or I could be surrounded by cats and be a cat token because hashtag 5 kittens. Hashtag 5 kittens showed up in the last top 10 video. So you guys should check that out. Hope you like it. So the other question I wanted to talk about real fast, which was, what would you play in Standard? And like, for example, in this course upcoming HOU Standard, I want to build the Nicol Bolas deck. That's what I want to do. I want to play the Grixis Control. Like, I want to take all the good toys they gave us and put them all together and see what happens when I'm able to play with Supreme Will and Doomfall and all this other cool stuff. And of course, with the big dog himself, you know, I now have a Damnation-esque card. Like, I want to see all these things happen and work. That to me would be the most exciting thing to build. Aaron, what would you play in this upcoming Standard if you had your druthers?
So is this like a fantasy world where like the deck is good or like the deck is viable, or does it have to be like an existing deck? Like, what are we? It can be
whatever you want it to be. What would you like to play in the upcoming Standard? If you know.
Okay, if it was possible, like I've seen some people dally with it before to varying degrees of success, but damn it, I want an Either Flux Reservoir deck. I want to kill someone with that card so badly, and I just, if we can find a way to make that work, I'm pretty sure there's nothing in Hour that would facilitate that. But damn it, do not let that set rotate without getting me a viable Reservoir deck. I tune into every Pro Tour since Kaladesh has come out. I've tuned into every Pro Tour, and I'm like, come on, give Mama a Reservoir deck, come on, and then it never happens. So that's my dream. I just want to blow someone's face off with a Reservoir, just.
Charge up the cannon and shoot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hope that glass doesn't get in your eye as it explodes. Kadoosh! Not disenchant! Those meddling kids,
50, not even like a 20. It's 50. It's just gonna peel your face right off.
Just could have got away with it too. You know?
No flux given. See what I did there?
Wow.
Nice. Well done.
You're welcome.
No flux given is a really good title for that deck.
That's extremely nice. I'll give you an A+ on that one. Didn't even see that one coming. Ruben, what would you like to play, buddy? If cost were no limit.
really like the blue-red control deck that Yoel Larson posted to Channel Fireball a couple days ago.
Okay.
I think that, first of all, Wandering Fumarole, that's who I am. So, there's that. 2, a Braid. I finally get to play the card Braid in a reasonable manner. You get to play the title song of the album, Hour of Devastation, in the deck, which is super cool. Yeah,
Did you know
exactly.
that people think that card is ban worthy?
It's not ban worthy. Gabe Nassif said that it might get banned
honest to
because
God,
of how good it is.
Was he trolling? Was he literally
I don't know.
trolling?
I don't know.
That was like one of the worst. Look, man, this is from the guy who came up with 3 Dudes Seriously. This was the guy who got time reversaled. There is just literally no way a removal / board wipe gets banned in Standard. That just sounds insane.
Yeah.
I honest to God. And you know when he could come out and say, like, lol, I was trolling, even if he wasn't, because it's so ridiculous. I can't. I mean, Brian Kibler immediately was just like, not a chance, like 0 chance. This is ridiculous. I mean, and so many people were like, it's just if that is what you're banning in Standard, how weird and bad would Standard have to get?
Yeah.
We can't have the deal 5 to everything spell. That's the bridge. That's the bridge too far. That's where we're at. Really?
Yeah.
So I think that's awesome. Whatever just happened, that's insane. But yeah, I think that deck would be super great to play. I mean, assuming obviously I would like to play a mono red kind of aggro deck, but there just isn't a lightning bolt that hits anybody in the face, so that's not a reasonable choice. I also quite like zombies. Still, I think that Claim to Fame might have a spot in zombies, and so I might try a red-black kind of aggressive strategy. But I think that the Joel Larson blue-red Wandering Fumarole deck is probably where I'd start.
Oh man, it was so odd when Nassif was just like, this has a non-zero chance of being banned, and I'm like, on what universe? Like, really? Are we in the Berenstain or Berenstein Bears at this point?
Right.
Is New Zealand above or below Australia? Because did Nelson Mandela die in prison? They just didn't tell us. How in the world do you ban a 5-mana Wrath of God? I just can't.
We're gonna feel real dumb in 6 months, and we have to talk about that on this show.
When we talk about it in the red zone.
I will make me a nice plate of crow, and man, I can't wait to pour some barbecue sauce on it, because what is happening when that screws up Standard? I just can't. It's just,
hey man, a Man of War got banned. So
a Man of War
maybe a Wrath gets banned.
Had anyone said Reflector Mage is going to be banned in 6 months, we'd be doing the exact same thing, laughing our butts off. But again, of all the effects, it's just oh man, it's kind of ridiculous. But so that's a thing. If there were any questions that you guys want to answer specifically, let me know. Let's see. So happy to take more questions. Go ahead.
I saw a question earlier, Evan. This is a pressing need. Whose hair would you rather have, Aaron's or Ruben's?
Wow.
Now today I hashtag woke up like this, so I don't got the best going on, but
that's every week, dude.
I know. When I wake up.
You ain't swapping it up, for this Wednesday. Right. I think if I'm gonna go, I'm a guy. If you're gonna go, guy. If you're gonna go, you should go all the way. I would have the luscious locks all down, and I'd be all doing that, and I would make it happen. I'd film basically a Revlon commercial for myself. It'd be amazing.
Right. And you guys share the same left side, so
absolutely.
Be all right.
Yeah. So I got an undercut the other day, so now it's. So now it's meant to be. So I have to be careful though. I have to remember my angles are different. I have to take my selfies differently now, because you don't necessarily just want to see that. It's a thing. It's very weird though. Like, I'm not used to touching my buzz and the wind on it. I know how it must feel like to be you, Evan, because the wind blows on my head, and that's a very surreal sensation.
Yeah.
There was definitely that time when I was like, all right, screw it. We're here. We're bald. Get over it. When I just shaved all of it off, and I'm like, fine, and it was really sad, and I threw away my ball caps, and it was ridiculous. But, and then you felt like the wind on your head for the first time, and you're like, oh, I'm so cold.
I shaved my head in college. I had a full beard and a shaved head for a good amount of time in college. It was a weird sensation. I got to dig up those photos, yeah.
Wow. So the user Gazette on Twitch asks if having the Vintage Cube up year-round is good or bad.
Mm.
Well, I play actual Vintage, so I couldn't really care less about the cube.
Wow.
It is interesting that Magic Online gets a very different clientele, it seems, when the cube of any type is up. Mm-hmm. The content that is produced is skewed dramatically when the cube is up. Personally, I would do nothing but play cube if the cube was up year-round. The problem is that Wizards wants to sell Magic cards, and when you have a format that is 100% Phantom all the time, you aren't selling Magic cards. You're not adding anything to the bloodstream of the Magic the Gathering online economy. And so it makes sense to keep it not year-round and use it only when you're adding new sets to Magic Online. I personally would love it, but I understand why it's not.
So here's kind of an idea that almost attaches itself back to what we started talking about at the beginning of the show. If the Vintage Cube would post literally all of its data or findings on all of its data, let's say on a monthly or bi-monthly basis, okay? Like literally these were the top performing decks or the combinations of cards or whatever. But here's the catch. If they were to update it to adjust these things on, let's say, a monthly basis, they would say, hey, over the past month, this strategy has been a little too dominant, so we added in, this form of, this type of strip mine effect or this type of pith needle effect or whatever it is. The Phyrexian Revoker is back in the cube because we need something that's going to shut down X strategy that has been too dominant. And, would allow them to have, whether they, for example, you could have guest cubes for a month or whatever, if they were really to take this and say, we're kind of going to dive deep. We're always going to have a cube. A cube is going to exist. Maybe it changes. Maybe we do some data crunching on it. I mean, again, you have the ability to just kind of craft the format that you want. Ultimately, I cubed a bunch when the cube was there. I loved it. I thought it was great.
I saw you playing Reanimator.
It's still surreal when the opponent plays the same card that you're playing.
Right.
That's still a weird moment because as someone who's cubed for decade plus whatever, you just don't see, like, you have some confidence that what you took is not what they can play, but of course that's not the case in the leagues and whatnot.
Right.
But regardless, it's so much fun. It's so cool. They have such a opportunity to make it what they want it to be. I think they definitely could make it work if they wanted to make it work and put some time and effort and manpower behind it. I think it would be really interesting. Let's see here. If you had to choose a favorite artwork, only one, what would it be and why? From Zero Magnum X.
Oof.
Gosh.
Artwork.
Favorites?
I mean, I'd probably choose Ad Nauseam. Like, Ad Nauseam is just fantastic, and it's one of those pieces that every time I look at it, I feel like I notice something different. Like, one time I looked at it and I noticed the pieces of tape, like, holding the dude's eyes open. Another time I looked at it and I realized that the quill was, like, plugged into its vein, and then that's blood. That's not ink. Like, he's using his own blood to write on the documents. And then another time I looked at it and I saw it was on the documents, and I think that's just one of my favorite arts of all time. Like, it's just so horrifying and also kind of silly in a way, and I think it just encompasses the cards so well and the flavor text and everything. I choose Ad Nauseam.
Wow. Ruben, you have one off the cuff?
Yeah, I mean, I got a couple ideas. Earlier, I saw a question that was like, if you could show one art to somebody, to show them what Magic card art is. And then you also made the comment of when a Magic card art does something unique, when it's able to express emotion in a way that you've never seen before, or it shows action in a way you've never seen before. The one that often comes to my mind, strangely enough, is a card called War and Weirding.
Okay.
It's a lot of the times when you show a removal spell, it's either it about to happen or after it's happened, and very rarely while it's happening. And War and Weirding is while the spell is occurring, which I always thought was super fascinating. I don't know why I've always picked that one out in my head whenever I think about Magic card art and what it can be and what it can do. When it comes to what would I show, you want to have the kind of reaction to, what is Magic card art? You show them one piece of art immediately. What does it mean to be a piece of Magic the Gathering art? The Corlash Heir to Blackblade from Future Sight, the pack art, was right in, you know, because originally you would pick Dak and Blackblade, but that was sort of like old style, and Corlash was kind of this update on the Blackblade name. And it's a really iconic dude with a weapon and a helmet standing over his enemies. Like, that's the kind of art that I would show. So those are some of a couple of the really, you know, iconic kind of pieces. But then, you know, once you get to show them 3 or 4 or 5, you can show them, look, it doesn't all have to be that way. Look at the art for Repopulate. It's just a couple of ferrets sitting on a log. Look at the art for, you know, Phyrexian Unlife with the porcelain mask. You know, there's a lot of interesting things that you can show and express. Riptide Serpent is another good example from Nemesis, a set that's not very good. But the art for Riptide Serpent is just spectacular. And there's so many ways that you can express the art that once you get to more, you can show them the breadth and the wideness of things. But I would start out with something like Damnation, you know what I mean? Like, very iconic. This is what Magic the Gathering art does.
It's weird because the card art that I would say essentially is my favorite is, and this again is because it was one of the first pieces I ever saw when I started playing the game. It's one of the things that made me think, wow, this game is awesome. And that would be Jazam Jin. Jazam Jin is such a awesome and cool, vicious, like menacing. It's evocative. It's not necessarily complicated. Like, you know, the artwork today is very streamlined. It's often digital. It's touched up. You know, it's perfected. It's very stylized. There's a style guide, whatever. And it sounded like they said, you know, Mr. Tadine, could you just like draw an awesome Jin who's holding a dude and he's about to eat him or something, and he was like, gotcha, fam. And it was on everything back in the day, and it just struck me as one of the most powerful, cool pieces of artwork that I'd ever seen. And always, to this day, it's just one of those cards that it's collectible not because it's good, but because it's, you know, because of what it means to Magic.
Yeah.
Which I think is
that's another one. That's a good one.
Absolutely.
I think that some folks in the chat are bringing up Baleful Strix, and I wanted to touch on Nils Ham real quick, who also did Thragtusk, and he's a lot more of an impressionist style artist, even in this era of really digitally touched up, focused art. And so you still have these artists that are sticking to the old ways, as it were, out there, and I think that Baleful Strix is another good example of something along those lines. And then you also can get back into like Therese Nielsen or Rebecca Guay, traditional fantasy, you know, dwell on the past, or any number of various angels that are out there. Yeah, I mean, there's so many that are iconic that you could be like, this is what Magic the Gathering is.
Absolutely. Let's see here. MDG Backfoil says, do you think creatures are way more powerful than spells now? Like, yes.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a real debate there. My question, I think, maybe, is he saying, like, are creatures now better than the spells used to be? No, because those spells were broken, and
a lot of the spells were broken.
Sneak Attack, Mind's Desire, I mean, you know, untapped spells, I mean, all sorts of busted, silly craziness, storm things.
Yeah, on the one hand, you have crazy powered-up creatures, but on the other hand, you have, like, you can't even print a 4-mana Wrath. You can't even print an Armageddon at any cost. You can't print a Lightning Bolt at not just 1 but 2. It's not even close.
Absolutely. So, Alessandro Gomez asks, what do you think needs to be done to hook retired players back in when Dominaria rolls around? And this will have to sort of essentially be our last question, but I can tell you real easily how they do that. They bring back Lightning Bolt. And I know it sounds silly, but I swear that card did things when it showed up in M10. Just
M11, I think.
M11, rather. Just blew people's minds of, oh my god, Lightning Bolt is back. I can now play with my favorite red spell. This is a spell I played back in Alpha Beta, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, it's amazing, it's powerful, it's sexy, it's great. All the red players want to play it. Yes, you could do things like callbacks to the Brothers' War or whatever, or yes, you could do things to bring back all the old tribes, you know, whatnot. But like, I think taking something iconic and bringing it back to the game, Birds of Paradise, which I know they're not going to do anymore because they don't do 1-mana dorks, but yeah, but Lightning Bolt, powerful, incredible, will always see play for the time it's in Standard. I mean, no matter how many times they've reprinted it, it's still worth money. It's always worth money. That would be my guess.
I definitely think that bringing back something that is either directly something that was iconic in the era, or that harkens back so directly that it's almost identical to something that happened in the era.
Mm-hmm.
Be that specific cards like Lightning Bolt, or specific archetypes. Like, I know they can't bring back free spells, like they're never going to bring back Peregrine Drake and Cloud of Fairies and Time Spiral. Obviously, that's never going to happen.
Right.
But you can do something along those lines, something Priest of Gix-like, where it is like a free spell, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, or bringing back Slivers is another example of a way that they can harken
really
back to that era. I'm not sure that Slivers has the clout with the pro players, but the question was, how do you bring pro players back, retired pro players back? And the answer is that you may, like, you
I thought the
have
question
to make...
The question was those who haven't played in a while. Is that correct? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It was something along the lines of, how do you bring back the pro players for Dominaria, or something along those lines, right?
What needs to be done to hook retired players?
Retired players.
So those who don't play anymore, you
Okay,
never fall off the bike.
I took retired to mean like retired pros. I apologize
Sure.
for that. Retired players, bring them back to Dominaria. I mean, they've done that before with Time Spiral. So I think that something along the lines of doing the purple rarity would attract people, being like, oh, I have a chance to open up in a pack a card that I opened up in a pack when I was 15. Like, that's the kind of mental thing that you have to do to bring folks back.
There's not a lot of nostalgia these days, I guess is
Yeah.
the thing. And we're fixing to get into all the nostalgia next year with the
He said we're
$20.
fixing.
Yeah.
We are. and when you get your
Southern
meal,
thing.
yeah, you get your meal, you get all the fixings. You know what I'm saying? That's how it works. That is how it works. But we're going to, Aaron, just really quick, do you have any ideas of what you would like to see in Dominaria? What would bring you back? Is it just dredge cards? Is that what we're saying here?
Evan.
Not necessarily.
I have other interests. No, I was actually having a conversation with Alex Ullman today, and what I think would bring people back, you mentioned bringing back Lightning Bolt, which is an iconic and beloved card. And I also think an iconic and beloved card should come back, preferably as common, so I can use it in Pauper. I think they need to bring back Reanimate as a common. Thanks, bye.
What was it originally?
It's an uncommon.
Even as an uncommon, that card was dumb. There's no way that card should be uncommon. That's ridiculous. If they reprinted it.
Now, here's what they can do. What they can do is they can reprint Reanimate as a common for like 4.
Well,
they could make it cost 1 billion mana.
Yeah, if you make a different card, I mean, sure.
I'm just saying, they can literally put the text from Reanimate on a Magic card. It's not an inherently broken card in and of itself if it costs colorless black, right? So they can do things like that. They can take overly powerful cards from years past, specifically even those that are natural to Dominaria, and just increase the cost a little bit, and then make it it's not going to be Reanimate, because nothing's going to be Reanimate.
Well, you have Open Fire. There's your Lightning Bolt.
Exactly. You can do things like Open Fire.
All right, so I'm going to draw a winner in our contest who wins a free box of Hour of Devastation from Daly City, California. Mr. Curtis W. Has officially won himself a box of Hour Devastation.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Mr. Curtis, I will be contacting you tomorrow, and we'll get you all situated and make sure on release day we get a box sent to you. So congratulations, and thanks to our friends at CoolStuffInc.com for sponsoring the show and these giveaways, which is great. So we're going to turn the corner to the finisher this week on our 100th episode, because today's episode is our 100th edition of Magic Mike's. This is a special night, of course, and obviously since you remembered our anniversary, what did you get us, Ruben?
Well, for this auspicious occasion, I got each of you a big red heart box of chocolates. But I know neither of you want them, since Evan would just lose them to his kids, and Aaron doesn't like mono red, so I just kept them for myself. For you, though, I kept them for myself.
Oh, right. This is the service.
Aww.
Service. You're welcome.
So sweet.
Right. Keeping cavities out of my kids.
Right.
And keeping terrible red things away from Aaron. That's terrific. Aaron, what'd you get us?
Well, this is indeed a very special night. And I know you've wanted to try this for a while. So just this once, I'm going to go out on a limb. And I'm going to try Tiny Leaders.
Oh,
Wow.
you do that for me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just this
That's
once.
so touching.
Well, thank you guys for being here today on this, the landmark occasion of our 100th show anniversary, otherwise known as the Diamond Anniversary of our coming together on the internet. I wanted to present to you the traditional 100th anniversary gift of a beautiful 10-carat diamond.
Wow.
I wanted to, but instead I just sent you guys your Patreon and cool stuff money, so happy anniversary.
I would have accepted a Mox diamond. Like,
Wow.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Exactly.
Or sky diamond.
Sky diamond.
Anything
Fire
from
diamonds.
Fire diamond.
I mean,
Perfect. Moss diamond.
Lion's Eye diamonds are a girl's best friend. I mean,
Wow.
just,
Well,
yeah.
there you go. That ends another episode of Magic Mike's. Thank you guys for joining us here to discuss all things magic. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you guys. Thank you for having me, and thank you all for watching. 100 is huge.
100 episodes. You guys are great. Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you. And it is really it's humbling that we wouldn't be here unless people kept watching us and wanting us to make this content. And it's really just a big deal for me, just for my ego, in addition to my love of the game, that people week in and week out come and listen to us just kind of jabber, which is great. I love it.
It's amazing. And I wanna close out this before we go to our final slide from Mr. James Finch in the YouTube chat. Says, I tried to watch Magic Mike's with my girlfriend once. She said it was just magic cards and dad jokes. ... She's buried in the backyard.
That's perfect.
And that, ladies
Love
and gentlemen,
it.
brings us to our 100th time for our final slide. All right, so I want to thank you guys for joining us here to discuss all the MTG. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, my co-hosts, Aaron and Ruben, you guys for watching, and hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmikes. Visit our website at magicmikespodcast.com that exists thanks to our Patreon supporters, or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to all the things social that tells people that we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv/magicmikes, on Twitter at magicmikescast, on Reddit at reddit.com/r/magicmikes, and then on Facebook at facebook.com/magicmikes. Talk to us privately at magicmikespodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmikespodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mike's. Good night, everybody.